There comes a moment in everyone's life when, without warning, something inside them breaks. It's not sadness, it's not anger, it's something deeper. It's as if the soul gets tired of carrying the weight of others' expectations, of sustaining relationships that only drain its energy, of trying to fit into spaces that no longer belong to it. It's at this moment that what Carl Jung described as the beginning of the true individuation process happens, the breaking point where the mask falls and the authentic self begins to emerge. The curious thing is that this moment doesn't come with great announcements. There's no sign in the sky, no mark on the calendar saying, "Today is the day you will be free." No, it comes when you least expect it. But when you need it the most, it rises after many nights of trying to convince yourself that things would get better, that maybe if you changed, if you tried harder, if you ignored that feeling in your chest that screamed something wasn't right, then everything would fall into place. But it doesn't fall into place, it never does. And then, in the midst of this emotional exhaustion, comes the decision to say enough. For Jung, this moment is a call from the unconscious. It's not a whim, nor a simple emotional reaction. It's a deep message from the psyche, a silent cry that has been there for years, waiting to be heard. It's the beginning of an irreversible journey, because once you decide to let go of what no longer belongs to you, once you dare to walk toward your authenticity, there's no turning back. The person you were before begins to disappear, and in their place emerges someone new, someone stronger, more conscious, more you. What many don't understand is that saying enough is not an act of rebellion, but an act of self-love. It's not the end, it's the beginning. But why is it so hard? Because even knowing that something harms us, we find it so difficult to let go. Jung explained this in such a clear way that it almost hurts to accept. We build our identity around what causes us pain. Perhaps you haven't realized it yet, but for years, you've been telling yourself the same story. You justified the pain with phrases like, "This is just how things are. I can't do anything to change it. Maybe I deserve this. Or what if I end up alone?" Your unconscious accepted these ideas as truths, and this shaped your reality. You stayed in relationships that didn't serve you, in jobs that extinguished your spirit, in dynamics that just drained you. And the worst part is that a part of you began to believe this was normal, that this was life. But it's not. Jung taught us that the soul constantly seeks its own evolution, and this evolution involves letting go of what no longer resonates with your authentic self. However, for this to happen, it is necessary to go through a painful yet transformative process, the encounter with the shadow. The shadow is everything you've repressed, the parts of you that were taught to hide desires, thoughts and emotions you considered unacceptable. But the shadow doesn't disappear because you ignore it. On the contrary, it manifests in your life in subtle yet constant ways, in the patterns you repeat, in the relationships that hurt you, in the anxiety you can't explain. And here's the crucial point. When you say enough, you're facing your shadow head-on. You're challenging the belief system that kept you trapped. You are, in a way, dying to be reborn. That's why it hurts. That's why it's so hard. Because you're not just letting go of a person, a job, or a situation. You're letting go of a version of yourself, a version that has been with you for years. That was your refuge, your excuse, your comfort zone. But that no longer serves you. That is no longer you. When you decide to let go, the unconscious reacts. At first, you'll feel fear. You'll doubt yourself. You'll wonder if you made the right decision. And it's at this point that many turn back. But here's something fundamental. You need to remember, fear is not a sign that you've made a mistake. It's a sign that you are changing. The unconscious doesn't want you to change. Its role is to keep you in the known, in the predictable. But the soul has another plan, and this is where the true inner battle begins. The battle between the comfort of the old and the uncertainty of the new. But if you manage to stay firm, if you get through the initial chaos without turning back, something incredible happens. You begin to reclaim your energy. Jung spoke about this as a kind of psychic rebirth. For years, your energy was scattered, trapped in dynamics that didn't allow you to grow. every time you tolerated a situation you didn't want, gave in to a part of your vitality, every time you suppressed an emotion for fear of being rejected, you drifted a little further from your essence. But when you decide to let go, all that energy returns to you. It's almost like magic. What once seemed impossible suddenly becomes clear. What used to matter suddenly no longer matters as much. And what you thought you needed no longer makes sense. But there's something else, something no one tells you, something only discovered after going through this process. The self-love that arises after saying enough is incomparable to any other form of love. It's a love that doesn't depend on external validation, that doesn't need approval. It's a love that comes from within, from the certainty that you are enough exactly as you are. And when you discover this, when you experience this level of love for yourself, your life changes forever. You stop searching outside for what has always been within. You stop settling for crumbs because you understand your true worth. You stop waiting for someone to save you because you realize you've always had the power to save yourself. And then, at that moment, everything begins to align, not because the universe rewards you for making the right decision, but because you are finally in tune with what has always been yours by right. Relationships change, paths open, opportunities appear, not because you're doing something different, but because you are finally being yourself. But this process doesn't end here, because once you discover this self-love, there's something else you need to do, something that will determine the rest of your life. When you begin to experience the self-love that arises after saying enough, something changes in your perception of the world. Before, you used to justify toxic behaviors, minimize warning signs, and tolerate things you knew deep down weren't right. But now, with this new self-awareness, you can no longer ignore what used to go unnoticed. It's as if you've awakened from a long sleep, and for the first time, you see reality without filters. What once seemed normal now becomes unbearable. The excuses you used to make for yourself no longer make sense. And this is where one of the deepest transformations occurs. You begin to see people as they really are, not as you wish they were. For years, you convinced yourself that if you tried hard enough, you could change someone, that you could make them see your value. You could be so good, so understanding, so loyal that sooner or later, you would receive the love and respect you deserved. But now you understand that this was never your responsibility. No matter how much you love someone, you can't fill the void of a person who doesn't want to fill it for themselves. Jung explained that when a person has not integrated their shadow, they project their own inner conflicts onto others. That's why, in many relationships, the same dynamics repeat endlessly. A person who hasn't faced their own darkness will unconsciously seek someone to serve as a mirror to project their chaos onto. And if in the past you were that person, if you allowed someone to unload their wounds onto you without taking responsibility for them, it was because you hadn't realized something fundamental. You weren't there to heal them, but to learn to heal yourself. But when you say enough, when you refuse to continue in that dynamic, something unexpected happens. The people who once controlled you with guilt, manipulation, or empty promises begin to show their true face. Maybe they will react with anger. Maybe they will try to make you feel guilty. Maybe they will tell you that you've changed. And the truth is, they're right. You've changed. You are no longer the person who accepted the unacceptable. You are no longer the one who silenced your voice for fear of losing self-love. It's not a passing feeling. It's an internal construct that, once solidified, becomes the foundation upon which you build your entire life. But for this love to grow, you need to face the hardest test of all, loneliness. Because when you decide to let go of what no longer serves you, a void is left, a space that was once occupied by relationships, habits, and beliefs that, despite being painful, were familiar. And in this emptiness, in this uncertainty, fear arises. The fear of having made a mistake, the fear of being alone, the fear of not finding something better. But here, you need to remember what Jung taught. The unconscious doesn't seek comfort, it seeks transformation. And every transformation involves a period of chaos before clarity arrives. During this process, it's normal for nostalgia to make you doubt, for there to be moments when you miss what you left behind. Not because you want it back, but because your mind hasn't yet adjusted to freedom. But this feeling of loss is only temporary, because deep down, there's something you know for sure. You could never go back to being the person you were before you awakened. And it's precisely at this moment that you begin to attract something completely different. Not because you're desperate to fill the void, but because now you resonate at a different frequency. Jung said that what we experience in the outer world is merely a reflection of our inner world. When you were broken inside, when you didn't value yourself, you attracted people and situations that reinforced that belief. But now that you've recognized your worth, now that you understand that self-love is non-negotiable, everything changes. The people you used to relate to no longer fit into your life, not because you pushed them away, but because they no longer resonate with you. Situations that you used to tolerate now become intolerable. And instead of wondering if you're being too demanding, you realize that you're simply setting a new standard. You no longer accept less than you deserve, not because you think you're superior, but because you've finally become someone who respects themselves. This is where many fail, where they turn back, because the process of transformation is not linear. There are moments when you feel like you're moving forward, and moments when it seems like you're moving backward. But the key is not to be swayed by the uncertainty. Jung said that the greatest danger on the path of individuation is the fear of emptiness, and the emptiness can be terrifying. But what no one ever taught us is that emptiness is the sacred space where the new can be born. If you fill this space too quickly, if you return to what you already know out of fear of uncertainty, you'll never discover what was truly meant for you. That's why, after saying enough, after letting go of what no longer serves you, the most important step is to allow yourself to be in that emptiness, to feel it, to explore who you are without all those emotional burdens, because something incredible happens. When you resist the temptation to fill the space with anything, clarity arrives, the clarity that once seemed unattainable. That deep understanding that you don't need anything external to feel whole. And when you reach this point, when you truly comprehend what it means to love yourself, your life begins to respond in ways you never imagined. Because now you no longer act from a place of scarcity, but from abundance. You no longer seek love, you project love. You no longer beg for attention, you attract it. You no longer settle for the bare minimum because you know your worth. And this energy, this new version of you, begins to reflect in everything around you. The people who enter your life no longer come to take something from you, but to share something with you. The opportunities that once seemed impossible are now within your reach. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Now that you've understood this truth, I want you to do something. Don't keep this message to yourself. Share this knowledge with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who is still stuck in the same cycle. You managed to break free from, because what you just heard is not just a reflection, it's a tool for transformation. Leave your comment below and tell me what resonated most with you in this message. I want to know where you are in this process and what you've learned from your own journey. And if this content touched your soul, help me spread this message to more people. Share this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so we can continue growing together on this journey of self-discovery and transformation. Remember, change begins with you.